We have 11 amazing restaurants featuring a wide variety for every price range and appetite. South Point's Garden Buffet has something for everyone at unbeatable prices. Or, if hunger strikes in the middle of the night, join us at Coronado Cafe. The American menu offers breakfast, lunch, or dinner 24 hours a day, plus a Chinese kitchen for authentic Chinese dishes from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. From steak and eggs to wonton soup, it's fast and friendly service 24/7. When you need a quick pick-me-up, you can find it at our state-of-the-art Starbucks just inside the main South Point entrance. Order ahead with the Starbucks app for easy mobile order pickups. Or enjoy your favorites in the relaxing dining area anytime, day or night. If you love Mexican food, Baja Miguel's has all of your south of the border favorites. There are dozens of classics to choose from, like fajitas, ceviche, chimichangas, tacos, and more. And for spirit lovers, Baja's colorful non-smoking tequila bar is right outside. Or maybe you're in the mood for seafood. Big Sur Oyster Bar has fresh seafood prepared right before your eyes. Savor freshly shucked oysters, crab legs jambalaya, shrimp and lobster. Beers on tap and a selection of fine wines are perfect to pair with your seafood favorite. Whether lunch or dinner, you'll love this fun atmosphere, located just off the casino floor. Ready to shake things up? Step back in time and treat yourself to one of the oldest restaurant chains in the country. Steak and Shake, famous for original mouth-watering steak burgers and hand-dipped milkshakes in a variety of flavors. For some old-fashioned fun, try Steak and Shake.
Good morning. Welcome in. It is Sports by the Book on a Saturday. You can't take the shot right now, Sean. You can wait till later. It's okay. What do we got here today? We got more March Madness, right? A little bit. Not a lot of madness so far. No, he did it anyway. Not a lot of madness to begin the first two rounds. Just running through some numbers before we get into the 8 games tomorrow. Alex and Kenny will be here tomorrow. We're not changing our schedules. That's why it's been just me the last 2 days. So I'll give my early thoughts on Sunday. My suggestion to everyone who's out there right now, what I say, probably do the opposite. That probably will work best for you with how the first 2 days have gone in this tournament. But real quick, for this, going into this round of 32, looking back at the round of 64, the Big Ten went 8-0 straight up in ATS. That is the best record ever on both accounts for that in round one. Most teams ever advanced with an undefeated record for a conference. The SEC advanced 8 of their 14, pretty much for the SEC. Their good teams held up. The good teams held up. Auburn, Florida, they did not cover. Tennessee did not cover, though. Kentucky did, running Troy out yesterday. Alabama did not cover. So, actually, the top 4 teams in the SEC did not cover round one. Kentucky did cover yesterday. Arkansas obviously covered 2 days ago. Ole Miss covered as an underdog. And then who am I forgetting is the last one? Texas A&M, they covered. So that's 8. So realistically speaking, for the SEC, 8 of their top 9 got through. The only one of that, of course, was Missouri, who was upset by Drake. Thanks, guys. But 8 of the 9 best teams in the SEC get through. So 16 of 32 are the SEC and the Big Ten. That's the most ever for 2 conferences combined. Then when you add in the Big 12, where the only loser in the Big 12 was Kansas, Texas Tech got through. They didn't cover, but they did get through. Houston, of course, got through and annihilated SIUE. They covered. BYU got through and covered. Arizona got through and covered. Baylor, same deal. Through and covered. Iowa State through and covered. So the Big 12 was awesome against the number as well. Only 2 non-covers of the 7 teams for them. Kansas and Texas Tech are the only ones not to cover. The Big East, they got there, at least in my opinion, their 3 best teams through. And actually, that's how the standings went through. All three of those teams covered as well. St. John's, Creighton, and UConn did get in, holding on for that cover at the end with a stop to win by 8. So the theme of this tournament so far is the really good teams have mostly handled their business. Of course, this is the first tournament since 2017 with no 13, 14, 15, or 16 into the second round since 2017. Only the sixth time that's happened since they expanded to a 64-team bracket. Yes, I know there's 68, but the bracket's still 64. Only the sixth time that has happened. 13 and 14 seeds were 1-7 against the number, which I forget who said on Twitter. I think it was Edward Egros, who said you'll be looking next year at 13 to 14. You might be right, but I'm just curious for those low seeds. Is this going to be more of what it is moving forward because of the gap with NIL and the transfer portal with all those good players going to high majors? It's not like there were a lot of upsets in the minor conferences either. I mean, those were some really good teams that got smacked around in round one. So, all right, let's go to it. The round of 32 begins in Providence, Rhode Island today with what we expected. The lone up, so basically the biggest upset of the tournament so far was McNeese over Clemson, and that took Clemson having a historically bad first half in order to get eliminated in round one. By the way, also, I forgot one other note. The ACC, first time since tournament expansion in 1985 that they'd only have one team in a round of 32. Well, the ACC, other than Duke, was basically a minor conference this year, so that shouldn't shock anyone. At the Mountain West actually had more teams than the ACC this go-around. But you look at this, the winner of this will go to Indianapolis. It could be a nice little draw for Purdue, getting at an Indy in the Midwest as the 4 seed. They get McNeese. As I mentioned, the Big Ten is undefeated against the closing number in this tournament at 8-0. They're 8-0 straight up. Purdue was one of those that actually probably struggled more than any of the Big Ten teams to cover. They ended up getting there. Thought High Point was one of the more competitive bottom 4 seeds in this tournament. Ended up losing that game by 12. Right now, this is 6.5 behind us. Total 141.5 on this game. Up from the opener 6. Total's gone down 3 points in this one. I don't see how McNeese goes back-to-back here. On an outright perspective, I don't see it. It took Clemson hilariously bad first half. I mean, Clemson scored 13 points in the first half. He scored 29 points in the first 31 minutes against McNeese. That was more just horrendous shooting more so than anything. Oh, and by the way, even with that horrible shooting, Clemson still shot better from 3 than McNeese did. In round one. Still did. I don't see an upset here. I think the way that this could happen is Purdue's guards struggle, but if Braden Smith ends up being the best player in this game, Kaufman Red did enough inside against High Point. If those two guys play well and Fletcher Lawyer plays well enough, I don't see how McNeese can win this game. And again, I don't love this Purdue team. I think they're pretty okay. I think they're okay. But again, as this tournament has proven, again, 20 of the top 21 Ken Pom teams won their matchups in round one. 23 of the top 26 and 25 of the top 20 and 24 of the top 29. Actually, 25 of the top 29. I was right the first time. This has been a dominant tournament by the high-end teams. Missouri, Clemson, Kansas, and Louisville, the only teams in the top 29 that did not win their first-round matchup. It has been a dominant showing by the better teams, and at least in this game, there is no reason to think it won't continue. If we see a 6 again, it would be a lay of Purdue. Still probably okay at 6.5. I really just don't see McNeese staying in this game. All right, we go to game 2. Oh, by the way, actually, first to 15, you can throw that up there, guys. First to 15, McNeese is plus 170. That is not the best price even in this region because Arkansas's got a better price. But bet early and bet often because those numbers will not be there by the time this game tips in about 30 minutes, I would say, more likely than not. All right, Arkansas and St. John's, game 2 here this morning on the West Coast, 2:40-ish in Providence, all depending on how quickly that first game goes. It's 7 with a total of 146. A lot of 145 in the market. Just got bet to the under at a lot of spots. Arkansas, of course, pulled the upset in round 1 over Kansas, which I think had more to do with Kansas than it had to do with Arkansas. St. John's, awful in the first half, just annihilated Omaha in the second half and round to a 30-point win and an easy cover. So, if you want to take Arkansas plus 3.5 first half, I have no issue with that. St. John's has been brutal in first halves in comparison to what they do in the second half. Their last 3 games, they were against Marquette. They were down by 2 at halftime, come back, win that game by 16. Against Creighton, they're down by 3 at halftime. They come back and win by 16. Omaha, they're up 5 at halftime. They win by 30. They've been dominant in second halves. And for Arkansas, again, there's never been a talent issue with this Hog team. It's a Calipari issue at this point. And it almost took them out in round 1. Kansas goes to a zone. Arkansas looks like they've never played against the zone ever. They end up getting bailed out at the end. Janelle Davis made a big-time shot. Kansas turned the ball over 5 times in their last 7 possessions. Arkansas ended up surviving because of that. If you look at the analytics of this game, I don't think there's a good argument on the Arkansas side unless if you think St. John's is going to have problems scoring in this game. I don't see Arkansas scoring more than 65 points in this game because of the Johnny's defense. Now, the only concern about that is both of these teams are willing to run. You could get a higher scoring game because there's a lot more possessions in this game. This could very easily be a 74, 75 possession game. Could happen. And if that's the case, it's very hard to go under those mid-140s in those type of games. I like St. John's to win the game outright. I like Arkansas plus the points first half. I think this is one of those where you take Arkansas first half. If it wins, or if Arkansas loses by the hook, which by the way this tournament has gone for me, that's probably what will happen. St. John's will probably be up 4 at halftime. I would come back on St. John's and lay a second half number. They've just been so good in the second half. Again, all year, but especially of late, where they've just toasted teams in the second half. I would expect that to happen again. And this is just such a monster coaching mismatch at this point. Pitino, and look, people can get angry at me. I'm okay with it. People are always angry at me anyway. But Pitino's the best coach to do it in this era. When all these other guys disappeared and retired, Kay and Bennett and Wright, and as much as I love those guys, well, at least loved Wright and Coach K, obviously, and Roy, who retired well before this. Pitino, I mean, this is year 2 at St. John's. This program was dead. The program was nothing. He hadn't won a tournament game since 2000. Sean wasn't even born yet, right? Correct? Drew Dog, I know, is definitely not born. I mean, Mike Jarvis was the coach the last time St. John's had won a tournament game. The job Pitino has done at St. John's is ridiculous. And you know what? If he decides to coach another 5 years, St. John's might win a national championship. Heck, they could win a national championship this year at this point. But again, I like Arkansas first half. Would flip around if Arkansas covers or is close in the first half. I would flip around and bet St. John's in the second half. That's the way I think. I think we get chalk in the first 2 games again. And I will say, for the people that are complaining about the lack of upsets, the more chalk we get now, the more elite these later weekends are going to be. And look, as much as we love a Cinderella, if all the double digits went down the next 2 days, oh my goodness, what an Elite 8 and Sweet 16 and Final Four we're going to have. Oof. I know Sean's rooting for Creighton, though. I know that. All right, we move along to Denver. to what I think is the least intriguing game of the day, Texas A&M and Michigan. I know I'll be probably proven wrong here. This is 3 right now on A&M. Total 143.5. A&M, I didn't, or actually, this is actually a 1.5 here. Or excuse me, this is 1.5 first half. This is 3 for the game with a total of 143.5. By the way, this total just got bopped up to 145 at Superbook. So if you're listening behind me right now, if you want the over, I would make sure you get that 143.5 and grab it now. I don't want it personally because I have no idea what's going to happen in this game. If you told me Michigan found a way to win another close game, I wouldn't be stunned. You told me A&M got Golden and Wolf and Shetter in foul trouble, and because they offensive rebound like crazy, wouldn't shock me one bit. Michigan of the Big Ten teams, I think, was the luckiest to win in round 1. UC San Diego spotted them a 10-0 lead. UC San Diego only lost by 3. And that was with Tate Jones being fouled out on nonsense with 6 minutes to go. Again, the Tritons deserved better, but Michigan has been unbelievably good in close games. And when you are a luck box, that's how it usually goes. For A&M, their box score against Yale is a little bit weird because A&M rebounded almost half of their misses this year. A&M won and covered against Yale with only rebounding 30% of their misses. If you had told me Yale did that good of a job against A&M on the offensive glass, I would have thought Yale would have won the game outright, personally. And why did A&M win and cover? Because A&M shot 71% from 2-point range. A bad shooting team had a really efficient day. I mean, A&M is usually under 50% from 2-point, and they were 71%. Now, that is probably your best argument for taking the underdog in this game. Even though, again, I don't really like this Michigan team. I think they've been very lucky this year. But there is some regression coming for A&M's 2-point shooting today. Yes, I know there are a lot of layups. I understand that. But A&M takes a lot of layups normally. And they still were 23% above of what they've done all year. So actually, as I talk through this, I think I actually like Michigan. Plus the points at 3. But again, Michigan has been so fortunate in close games that it is very hard to justify taking Michigan here in a game that will be close against a team that is very well coached in Texas A&M. But again, based off the round 1 numbers for Texas A&M, I think their regression is 100% happening in this game. And Michigan's close game regression hasn't regressed at all through the year. By the way, Michigan in that round 1 game turned it over 14 times, which is about on their season average, and they shot 55% from the free throw line. Again, that's another box score that if you told me it beforehand, I would have said, oh, probably Michigan wins the game. But again, UC San Diego in the 10-point hole early. Tate Jones did nothing because of foul trouble. Again, Michigan been very fortunate this year, but wouldn't be shocked if they win again here based off that regression that should be expected out of A&M. All right, next up, we go to Wichita next. The Drake Bulldogs, who pulled off the second biggest upset of round 1, will take on Texas Tech. Texas Tech was one of the more sluggish teams in this 3-4 range. They were actually losing in the second half against UNC Wilmington. They end up winning by 10. Texas Tech, who normally they do take a lot of threes. But Texas Tech set they shattered their record for most 3-point attempts in a game in the tournament. Sean, you like fun with numbers? Texas Tech took 69 shots from the field in their opening round matchup against Wilmington. 46 threes and 23 twos. That is insanity. Now, look, they take a lot of threes normally. When they're hitting their threes, they're as good as anyone in the country. And Texas Tech has hit their threes more times than not this year. They're a top 25 three-point shooting team. My concern in this game for Texas Tech, and why I think Drake +7 is a reasonable bet here, is, and we saw it against Mizzou, Drake, and by the way, that was a fast Drake game at 65 possessions. That was the fastest game that did not go to overtime that Drake had played since February 12th, and it was the third fastest game they played all year in a game that didn't go to overtime. 65 possessions. That's how slow Drake plays. Now, look, there's the question of the athleticism and talent that Mizzou did not take advantage of against Drake, and was part of the reason I liked Mizzou. I thought Mizzou's athleticism would be too much, but Mizzou had one of the worst game plans I've seen from them the entire year. And Drake took full advantage in that game, winning outright by 10. But here's the deal for Texas Tech. It's very simple. You got to be making your threes. If you don't make your threes in a slow possession game, and again, remember, this is a highly efficient Texas Tech offense. They're a top 10 offense in the country efficiency-wise. But if this happens to be one of those games, and we can see it in the tournament, and by the way, Ryan McCormick, producer extraordinaire, sent this from yesterday, going into the last slate of the day yesterday, and this held up. It was the worst two-day stretch of shooting the three-pointer in college basketball since 2008. We were sub 28% from three yesterday and the day before. It was a brutal shooting round one. And if that continues here for Texas Tech, that's how Drake stays in the game. Now, I expect Texas Tech to win. I think when it's all said and done, when Texas Tech needs a bucket, they will be able to go inside the JT Toppin, and JT Toppin will bail them out. But you got to be careful. This is a very hard matchup. This is, to me, the second best coach team in the country at this point. What Ben McCollum has done in year one and Drake should not happen in this day and age. Taking basically a whole D2 roster and winning a game in the tournament and going 31-3. Boy, are the Iowa Hawkeyes going to enjoy Ben McCollum, assuming they get that right. What a hire he's going to be, assuming that he's the guy in Iowa City. But I think +7 is good on Drake. I don't expect an upset. I expect Chalk to win out, but I think +7. I think if you like a dog, this is not a bad one to be on here today. All right, we go to Lexington next. Auburn, Creighton. I think this is one of the more intriguing games of the day. I mean, these 1-8, 1-9 games are really, really good. So this begins the nightcap in Lexington. Creighton just kicked the crap out of Louisville. Just destroyed them. Unbelievably impressive performance by Creighton. Now, I think we do have to take anything against an ACC team that isn't Duke with a grain of salt. I think it's been pretty clear that the ACC was El Stinkeroonie this year. You like that one, Sean? Just not a good conference. Stephen Ashworth was awesome in that game. Now, you get a number 1 overall seed in Auburn. Auburn has been super disinterested now for 3 weeks. And look, going into this stretch where they're 2-3 in the last 5, including the round 1 win and not even coming close to covering against Alabama State, they have looked super disinterested since they won at Rupp Arena. Unbelievably disinterested. And that worries me. Now, I don't know if it will be this game that they get picked off. But you very rarely see a team that loses focus as badly as Auburn has end up winning the title. You just normally don't see that. And unlike Houston and Duke and Florida, yeah, I know Florida didn't cover, but credit to Norfolk State who played their behinds off at the end of that game. And as soon as they went down by 35. But this is an interesting one for one reason and one reason only. If the refs don't get Ryan Kalkbrenner in foul trouble early, Creighton has the body to take Broome out of this game. Now, look, drop coverage, Auburn's been great against all year. But Broom might have to beat Creighton from the outside, which he's capable of doing. But if he's not hitting his perimeter shots, that's how this game gets funky. And look, I don't know if Creighton's capable of winning this game outright. I think it would be a lot. And Greg McDermott's a great coach. This team that lost, in my opinion, their best player in Pops Isaac all the way back in November with the hip injury. He'd been out basically the whole year, and they're here in round of 32. The unbelievably good coaching job by McDermott. But in the end here, I just think 9 is too much. I'm curious if the favorites cover early of this, because this is an evening game. This is a 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern game. I just wonder if Auburn gets bet up, and if this number goes higher, I would be very much be enticed on betting the Blue Jays here at +9 in this game. If we go higher, absolutely would take Creighton. I think this is an Auburn win and a Creighton cover. I feel like this game, both of these 1-8, 1-9 games are going to be super tight here tonight, but Auburn ends up prevailing and they end up winning this game. All right, let's take a quick break. We're scooting along here on a Saturday morning. We'll get the remaining 3 games of the night here. I'll give you my thoughts on Sunday as well, since it'll be Alex and Kenny tomorrow, and we'll continue on Sports by the Book, South Point Studio.
Once you've satisfied your hunger, get ready for more of the hottest casino games in Vegas. Our 24-hour, 30-table non-smoking poker room proudly hosts all the most popular poker games with a variety of betting limits. Visit the poker room for a schedule of daily tournaments. Whether you're going to hold 'em or fold 'em, the best place for poker is at South Point Casino. You'll notice that our craps tables are usually the loudest in the casino. If you've never played, join one of our free craps lessons to find out what makes this game so exciting. Check with the craps dealer for schedules and give it a roll. Bingo is also an exciting way to spend your time. We offer 7 sessions of bingo every day. Bingo! And each session includes a cash ball jackpot, 12 bingo games, a progressive double action game, and a $10,000 bonus coverall. Electronic units are available. If you haven't played bingo with us, give it a try today. Guests can also get in on the action at our one-of-a-kind race and sports books, 2 separate rooms designed to maximize your experience and comfort. Our sports book, with over 400 seats, puts you right in the middle of the action, 24 hours a day. The friendly ticket writers are happy to help, and it's conveniently located next to the famous Del Mar Deli, where you'll find supersized portions of delicious deli items like roast beef, pastrami, and Reuben sandwiches, or soups, salads, and pizza. Plus spectacular desserts fit for a king. And right next door is the race book. Over 150 seats, each with its own TV screen. There are 16 interactive player terminals, so you can bet right from your seat.
We're back in at Sports by the Book here on a Saturday morning. We continue on with the 3 later games in the Saturday card here in the NCAA tournament. We go to what I think is the most even game of the day, and that's BYU and Wisconsin. And the number tells you that as well. Cougars are now a 1-point underdog. There's a bunch of 1.5s in the market against the Badgers with a total of 155. And these 2 teams essentially play the same sort of ball, which leads me to believe that this is solely just going to come down to who shoots the ball well in this game. I would argue, even though it ended up being a 9-point margin, what BYU did in round 1 against VCU was one of the more impressive performances of Thursday, where they played a team that was pretty darn even in talent-wise, in ability, and they beat the snot out of them for the middle 15 minutes of that game. That was super impressive by BYU. And this is a BYU team that, again, all the way back on February 8th, after they got blasted at Cincinnati, it was like, oh, this BYU team is going to make the tournament. They're going to have to win some games down the stretch. Again, they have won 9 of 10. Their only loss was to Houston in the Big 12 tournament, which, whatever. Houston, again, to me, still have them winning the title, even with the matchup that comes later tonight. But this BYU team is playing as well as anyone in the entire country. And they get Wisconsin, who, again, weird down the stretch after getting to 21-5. They alternated loss, down the stretch, including that flabbergasting one at home against Penn State to end the regular season. But they've stabilized it nicely, got to the Big Ten final. If they didn't have their worst shooting game of the year, they probably would have beat Michigan handily. And then they beat cover against Montana, at least the closing numbers. This solely comes down to who shoots the ball better, unless if Tanjay has a huge game, which he could. Tanjay is more than capable of taking this game over, and it end up being a Wisconsin win because of that. This is, to me, of all the games here today, this is the hardest one by margin. This is pretty much just whatever you think in your head of who the better team is. If you think Wisconsin is better, go bet Wisconsin. If you think BYU is better, go bet the Cougars. But I would lean to BYU. I'm going to stick with my ridiculous bracket. I picked BYU beforehand. I just think when it's all said and done, they are more capable of beating you in more ways than Wisconsin. And that ends up being the difference in this game. Now, the one advantage Wisconsin does have in this game, and this could tilt it, Wisconsin is much better defensively. You could basically shut me up right there and basically say, Jeff, Wisconsin is 45 spots better than BYU on defense. How are the Cougars staying in this game if they can't get stops in comparison? Valid point. But BYU is better on offense. They are, again, both of these teams are so efficient. Now, BYU is a better shooting team. Wisconsin's the best free throw shooting team in the country as well, which you always want to keep in mind in March, especially when all these games, especially games line 1. This game's going to be close between BYU and Wisconsin. All right, we move along. Gonzaga and Houston. This is absurdly good for a 1-8. And again, the committee did absolutely no favors to Houston. And really, even, like people will point to, Florida has to play the two-time defending champions. Gonzaga is way better than Connecticut is. And the line tells you that. This is 5. This is as short as you're pretty much ever going to see in a 1-8. Total is 140. Now, Gonzaga is going to be a very popular underdog money line pick today by the public. Just know it. People have always seen what it is with Houston. Oh, they lose in the tournament around earlier than they should because they forget how to shoot in the game. Kelvin Sampson's only been in the Final Four once. He's been a 1 seed now 4 times at Houston, 3 times at Houston. All that stuff. Here's the biggest argument against Gonzaga, and I got to shout out JR at the ballpark who, Sean, you missed JR yesterday, by the way, at the table. Even though he wanted to know why you booed him. So JR pointed this out, and JR's right. Gonzaga, against the team that plays most similarly to Houston that they play every year, hello, St. Mary's. What did they do this year? Well, they lost by 4. They lost by 7. And the WCC title game was one of the worst shooting games of all time. Gonzaga scored 58 points, and that was enough. If St. Mary's had an average shooting game, St. Mary's wins that game. And if you extrapolate it out, this is, at least by a beating high-end team standards, this is as weak of a team as few has had in a long time. The only top 30 team other than St. Mary's that Gonzaga beat this year is Baylor. And they just moved into the top 30 after the win yesterday against Mississippi State. Their next best win was San Diego State. They lost to West Virginia. They lost to Kentucky, basically a home game. They lost to UConn. They lost to UCLA. This is not the same Gonzaga team. They're not as good as they usually are. That's why they're in this game. And to me, look, could Gonzaga cover the 5? Absolutely. Houston could win this game needing a defensive stop at the end. But I would really be surprised, unless if the Houston ghosts of the past rear their ugly head with the shooting and Gonzaga shoots well, I just have a very hard time seeing Houston blowing this game here today. And by the way, the winner of this game is going to the Final Four. I feel pretty confident in that at this point. Whoever wins this game will handle Purdue in the round of 16. And I don't trust either Kentucky or Tennessee, really. I know Kentucky already beat Gonzaga once this year. I don't trust those teams on the bottom side of the bracket. And Kentucky might have their hands full because Illinois is favored in tomorrow's game. And we'll get to UCLA in a few moments. But I would look to the under at 140, and I'd look to throw Houston in moneyline parlay. I just have a hard time seeing them losing here in this one. All right, last game of the night. UCLA, Tennessee, Rocky Top, and the Bruins. 5 right now in this game with a total of 131. And I like an upset here. UCLA, as we've talked about, has been brutal outside of the West Coast this year. Brutal. Your only wins east of Arizona were at Indiana and Northwestern. That was it. Until they thrashed Utah State, which again was, in retrospect, a big-time misbet, which was just an awful matchup for Utah State because Jarrett Calhoun and Mick Cronin know each other so well, and UCLA just carved up that Utah State zone. And Utah State couldn't shoot. Bad combination for the Aggies. This is you could say this is a Rick Barnes history pick against here. But this UCLA team is really good. And I don't think they've gotten the proper credit for how good they are because of the weirdness away from home this year. Because really the most eyeballs that this team has gotten all year was when Cronin lost his mind at the reporter after the Iowa game. This is a really good basketball team that is really good on defense also. This game, that 131 is probably too high also. This could be a super low-scoring game. Slow tempo, high-end defenses, concerned about Tennessee's offense, even under top 20 efficiency again. They always scare me in the tournament. Also, by the way, that was a 60-possession game against Wofford that ended up at 139. You get another 60-possession game, it's sure as hell not going 139 in this game. So I like it under. I like the 5 with UCLA, and I would not be shocked one bit if the Bruins pull this thing off and get to the Sweet 16, which, again, Illinois is favored against Kentucky tomorrow, which I don't necessarily agree with, which I'll touch on before I get out of here today. But I like the Bruins. So take the 5 with UCLA in this one. So advancing through today, chalk in Providence with Purdue and St. John's. Auburn advances, but really struggles, I think, with Creighton. UCLA is an upset. BYU is a small upset. I'm going to advance Michigan against my better judgment against A&M, but boy, they've just been so lucky this year that it's hard to really justify that. And then the 2 favorites in Wichita win, but I'm not sure they did either cover with Houston and Texas Tech in Wichita. So, if that's the case, that'd be the biggest seed advancing today would be a 7. We're still looking at a pretty darn good second weekend if we get that. All right. One last break. When we get back, I'll give you my thoughts for Sunday, and then we'll get out of here on Sports by the Book here at the South Point studio.
We have 11 amazing restaurants featuring a wide variety for every price range and appetite. South Point's Garden Buffet has something for everyone at unbeatable prices. Or, if hunger strikes in the middle of the night, join us at Coronado Cafe. The American menu offers breakfast, lunch, or dinner 24 hours a day, plus a Chinese kitchen for authentic Chinese dishes from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. From steak and eggs to wonton soup, it's fast and friendly service 24/7. When you need a quick pick-me-up, you can find it at our state-of-the-art Starbucks just inside the main South Point entrance. Order ahead with the Starbucks app for easy mobile order pickups. or enjoy your favorites in the relaxing dining area anytime, day or night. If you love Mexican food, Baja Miguel's has all of your south of the border favorites. There are dozens of classics to choose from, like fajitas, ceviche, chimichangas, tacos, and more. And for spirit lovers, Baja's colorful non-smoking tequila bar is right outside.
Welcome back in at Sports by the Book here at the South Point Studio. I'm Jeff Parles. Let's look at Sunday in the men's tournament. By the way, real quick, women's tournament-wise, I have no bets, but so far, a lot of chalk over there as well, which a little more normal in the women's side of things. Juju Watkins and company in action today, so we'll be looking forward to that. That was my pick. USC to win the women's tournament was what I had going into it. All right. Tomorrow, real quick, rapid fire here because Alex and Kenny will go through all these tomorrow in length. Starting in Raleigh, we'll go rotation number order here to make it easy. Duke is a 12-point favorite against Baylor with a total of 144. Duke was absolutely dominant yesterday against the Mount. And more importantly, Cooper Flagg looked totally healthy. Which, if Cooper Flagg is healthy completely, there is no excuse for Duke at least getting to the Final Four. If they lose to Houston, if they lose at that, lose a little bit earlier, that's where we're looking at here in this one. But Duke, the 12-point favorite here in this one with a total of 144. All right, next, Florida, UConn, 9.5 here with a total of 151.5 on this game. Gators, they were great early, but they got outplayed. They got outplayed the last 20 or 25 minutes of the game by 16 seed Norfolk State. Now, again, the focus isn't always there with that, but again, it was not a great showing the last 25 some odd minutes of that game by Florida. Now you get UConn, who I thought was pretty fortunate to win, honestly, yesterday. They got totally bailed out by Alex Caravan late. They somehow cover, also winning by 8. By the way, Oklahoma's got a stud in Jeremiah Fears. You hope that Porter Mosier sticks around, because if Fears sticks around, he might be the best player in the SEC by next year. What a stud he is. As one of the youngest players in all college hoops. 9.5. is your number here. 151.5 on the total. Total might be a little bit high, if anything. Looking for reasons for UConn. It's really only UConn March theory. By the way, UConn now with the most consecutive wins since the UCLA era in the NCAA tournament, and 13 straight covers in the tournament as well, which honestly is being a favorite in all 13 of those games. Probably is almost as impressive as the 13 straight wins outright in the tournament. But unlike the Gonzaga-Houston game, where yes, Gonzaga is not the same team that they were, I just have a very hard time seeing this UConn team being able to pull this thing out right. When Florida is right, Florida is the best team in the country at the moment. I just have a very difficult time doing that. Taking UConn, looking for an angle on UConn on the money line. I just really have a hard time on that. So staying off on the 9.5 as well. I think that number's right. I think they should be pushing double digits in this game. Would be very cautious of taking it with UConn. By the way, we're underway in Providence. Sean, did you bet McNeese first to 15? McNeese is up 3-2. A minute in that one. All right, the Cleveland next. St. Mary's in Alabama, 5.5. With a total of 148.5 in this game with Bama against St. Mary's. I know St. Mary's held up really well against Gonzaga this year. Really well. It is so difficult. So difficult, though, to pick St. Mary's in this game. Bama played a pretty bad game, all things considered, yesterday. They were fortunate. That was basically the only super high seed that I thought actually had a chance to win based off the game flow. Robert Morris played really well. Alabama did not in that game yesterday. And honestly, Bama was pretty fortunate Robert Morris wasn't hitting threes, because if Robert Morris was, probably would have pulled that thing out yesterday. 5.5, 148.5. Total super low in a Bama game, but that St. Mary's grinding it out. Credit to the Gales, though, yesterday. I mean, they looked dead against Vandy yesterday. Totally dead. Came out of the hole, ended up winning the game. 5.5, I think, is too much. It would only be a lay of Bama, but boy, Bama got to play a lot better than they did yesterday, or else they will lose this game if they play like they did yesterday against Robert Morris. Big Ten, of course, was undefeated. Michigan State and New Mexico, 7 on this one, 148. Absolutely no issue here. No issue with this number. Right on it, 7, 148. On to the next, Sean. Ole Miss and Iowa State. Cyclones just eviscerated a Lipscomb team that I thought would actually show a lot better than they did. Ole Miss did their best to blow a 22-point lead, but Sean Badula bailed them out, and Ole Miss ended up winning that game against Carolina yesterday afternoon to KO the ACC other than Duke. 5 and 145.5. I was really hoping for more points with Ole Miss in this game. I was really hoping for like a 7, 7.5. Not going to get it. No play at 5, 145.5. I think Ole Miss is capable of pulling this upset, but boy, if Iowa State's going to play like they did yesterday, and that could have just been an overmatched opponent, Cyclones are going to be super hard in order to be beaten the way they played yesterday. All right, Kentucky and Illinois. This is the midday game, and this is a line that I think the wrong team is favored in. Illinois yesterday against Xavier put together a brilliant offensive performance. There's no arguing it. They were brilliant yesterday. But Illinois, who is not a good three-point shooting team, they are 31% on the year after yesterday's great offensive showing from three. They shot 40%. They were hovering around near 50 for the majority of the game. I just have a very difficult time seeing this number the way it is. Kentucky's the better basketball team to me. And they have been for the majority of the year. Now that they're a little bit, look, we obviously know that Jackson Robinson won't be there, but they're healthier now. And they did what they needed to do yesterday. And they got nothing out of Lamont Butler yesterday either. They handled a team they're much better than. And they handled them. That's been something Kentucky hasn't done in the tournament the last few years. Now, granted, new coach, totally new team. Still, you had to get over it. And they got over it. I think the wrong team is favored in here. This is actually my favorite round 2 bet, period. Money line on Kentucky. I'm curious to see if this thing closes pick, if the market feels similarly to how I feel. But I don't see it. I don't think Illinois should be favored in this game. I like Kentucky. Will money line the Cats in this one. All right, and then we got one more, right, Sean? 2 more. One more site, I should say. Colorado State and Maryland. Boy, the Terps were really good after a slow start yesterday. Once they got their legs underneath them, they just eviscerated Grand Canyon. And Maryland kind of showed you why they're capable of winning a national championship if things could go their way. Yes, I am willing to put them in that category. When you have those bigs inside, in Queen and Reese, and yesterday didn't get a lot until the second half out of Jacoby Gillespie. This team is really good. Really good. And then, assuming that chalk prevails in Maryland and Florida, boy, what a matchup that is going to be in a round of 16 in San Francisco. Colorado State, great win yesterday. They took full advantage of Penny Hardaway, dominated the second half. Nico Medved is a great coach and probably should be somewhere better than Fort Collins at this point. But the luck will run out here. Maryland outright, I don't know if I want to lay 7.5, though. That feels like a steep number in this game, especially in Maryland was only 10.5 against Grand Canyon. I don't know. I think I would stay off. There are a lot of 7s in the market as well if you want to lay out with Maryland, but I think the Terps are just much, much better. And then for my second favorite play of round number 2, Sean, we're taking the Ducks. We're finding the 4, and we're taking the Ducks against Arizona. Wildcats played a perfect second half against Akron, who was well overmatched. And Oregon was amazing yesterday against Liberty in a game that was never competitive. And honestly, those two games are really kind of just a telltale sign of what we had here. This is a monstrous coaching mismatch. Monstrous. Dana Altman, who, by the way, is now lost in the first round at Oregon, by the way, as a head coach. Pretty darn impressive. This is Tommy Lloyd against a well-coached team that is similar enough in talent. Altman, by the way, in the tournament, since he's been in Oregon, has won at least one game every year. And when he's been a favorite in the first 2 rounds, he has never lost. Last year, remember, they played that epic double overtime game against Creighton in Pittsburgh that Creighton found a way to win, and Creighton ended up covering that game, if you remember. If you remember that nonsense late night in Pittsburgh. But this is a really, really good Oregon team. A really good Oregon team. And Arizona, who again I think is super, super talented, just not as well coached. Not as well coached here. So we will be on Oregon and Kentucky, the 2 dogs, on Sunday. All right, before we get out of here, we're going to bring in our guy for a few minutes. We're just going to bring him right on set. We'll do about 5 minutes here with Vincenz before we get out of here today.
You don't want to. Where are you going?
We're, we got games to watch, Vinny. We also went through everything so far, which is good.
All right. Well, so did I.
So did I. Well, I know you've been a little bit busy. Good start for Purdue out of the gate.
Yeah, and the first to 15 too, right? Or they? No, what are they? 14 right 14, now.
Well,
yeah, so
it would take a 9-0 run for McNeese to get there.
I don't think.
But by the way, it took Purdue less than 5 minutes to exceed Clemson's first half total against McNeese. So
still too soon, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, for some, I didn't have Clemson, so that was good.
All right.
So, all right, Vinny, what are they betting here today, and what is this is as good of a round of 32 card that I can remember because of the lack of upsets in round 1.
Well, very chalky, right? Especially yesterday. The afternoon and evenings, especially, have been pretty chalky. So, to your point, Jeff, great matchups. Obviously, they came in on Purdue this morning, so that game close to 6.5 at South Point, 140.5. Bet it under by about almost 4 points. I'll go in rotation order here. So Arkansas and St. John's. Johnny's got as high as 7 off the 6.5 opener, back to 6.5 right now. Of course, that the winner of this game plays the winner of Arkansas and St. John's, and I think that Athero is out for Arkansas. Their leading scorer and rebounder. I believe he was listed as questionable. I did hear a report this morning that he is not going to play today. But then again,
here's what Calipari said yesterday.
Yeah.
He was out there at practice.
Right.
If you ask me, the kid will try and convince me. I've seen crazier things.
Right. So
read that however the hell you want.
I think there's a little gamesmanship in there. Now, there's a report this morning that said no, but again, you know what? Wait for the warm-ups, and there'll be plenty of time to adjust to that. So that totals up a couple of points. Not a real surprise, right? 146.5.
Nope.
Auburn, 9 down to 8.5 against Creighton. The total on that game down from 151 to 150. UCLA and Tennessee. Tennessee, they laid the 4.5, and we're at 5 on that game right now, on 131. We've got with the graphics. Outstanding crew. The Cougs against the Zags. Houston up to 5 from 4.5 total on that game, holding steady at 140. Texas Tech holding steady as a 7-point favorite against Drake. Lowest total on the board today, right? 126.5 in that one. Wisconsin, this game has had a lot of action so far. When we put it up 2 nights ago, Wisconsin opened as a 1.5-point favorite. Went down to pick.
Mm-hmm.
Game is back to Wisconsin 1 right now, up from 154.5 to 155.5. Texas A&M up to 3 from 1.5 against Michigan. So that rounds out the card. And that's a contrast in style, right? I mean, You got Michigan, the physical and the size there. The question is, by the way, Michigan's played and won more close games than any team in the tournament this year. And when I say close games, too, against quality opponents, right?
Well,
we escaped the other night, too.
We've talked about this, too, with Michigan, Vinny, where other than I'll give you the exact date real quick.
That game, by the way, excuse me, Jeff.
Yeah, go for it,
the
please.
total's up almost 4 points to 144.
So since they beat Washington on January 12th, all but one of their wins has been by 4 points or less. Or 6 points or less because they won by 6 in the Big Ten final.
You would think, too, that close games bode well for the tournament, especially as you advance. I guess you could give a slight edge there, but they're going to really have to protect the ball against a Texas A&M team that's, they played with high pressure, helter-skelter. They're exceptional on the offensive glass. These are really good matchups, as you said at the outset.
I have one question for you, just with everything as a whole. Lack of upsets outright.
Mm-hmm.
No 13, 14, 15, or 16s win against a top seed.
Yeah.
First time that's happened since 2017. Sixth time that's happened since the brackets expanded in 1985. The other weird thing with that is, other than the 16s, other than the 15s, who actually did a great job covering, except for Bryant last night, who was covering for 35 minutes and then wasn't.
And then decided, no.
But
once again,
usually 14 and 13s are usually pretty good against the number. 13s had been historically really good of late. They were 1-7 against the number, 14s and 13s this year.
And I think that surprised a lot of people. How did that bode for the house? It was a good, listen, I get asked this a lot too, especially when we go upstairs, Jeff, with the great crowd that we've got up there with about 2,500 guests in that great setting. How's things going? Just look around you, right? How's it going? It's great. The excitement, some people are cashing some tickets. Some people are, they're not cashing all tickets. But the thing is that, it's gone well. Even without the upsets, it has not stopped any of the wagering. The thing is that folks have, they adjust to what they see, and they're folks are better handicappers today too, honestly. And again, in our world, it's not a situation where we always want all of the underdogs, right? I mean, we need that balance. Yesterday, again, just like on Thursday, a good morning and midday for the house, a better late afternoon and evening for the bettors. So it's gone back and forth, and the bettors have adjusted. Credit them for that, and they're paying very close attention to the numbers too.
Before we get out of here, Vinny, I just want to bring up one very important stat that I forgot to bring up earlier in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Remaining ACC teams once. Remaining teams coached by a Patino, 2.
Yeah, that's right. And the Big Ten is undefeated so far, right?
Well, not only that,
right?
The Big Ten is 8-0,
yeah.
And they're 8-0 against the closing number as well, which
exactly.
Look, going 8-0 straight up is hard enough. Going 8-0 against the closing number is bonkers.
Pretty strong.
I mean, that's I mentioned at the beginning of the show, half of the field remaining is Big Ten and SEC.
Yeah. And
then you have 6 Big 12 teams on top of that.
I think there's been some surprises, too, with the SEC and with their dominance. And during the regular season, and of course we talked about it, they had the most bids. Some of the higher seeded teams have been knocked out. But then again, look at Arkansas and the job they did, and they advanced. To the league's credit, I will say this.
of the top 9 seeds at the SEC tournament.
Yeah.
Only one of them is gone.
Yeah.
And of course, that's the one that I wanted to win, but that's okay. But the other top 9 teams, they're all around, so the teams that weren't really on the bubble, they all won, other than Missouri in round 1.
The game tomorrow, by the way, just to look ahead, there's been more movement on tomorrow's totals, but Arizona's gone from a 4.5-point favorite. They took the 4.5, and they took 4, so that game is now Arizona 3.5 against Oregon.
That is my favorite one tomorrow, which means bet Arizona. I'm with the market on that one, Vinny. So bet Arizona since I like the Ducks on that. All right, that's what we got for you, crew. Drew Dog, Sean, thank you. Vincenz.
Good job, guys.
I hope you enjoy at least one pulled pork sandwich up there today.
Oh, I'll get it. I'll definitely.
At least.
Definitely.
We'll see you again. The party one more day. It's upstairs. It's going right now. Really will get going in about 3 hours. Make sure you get up there for when you get multiple games going at once here at the South Point. Alex and Kenny are here tomorrow. 9 a.m. They'll get you ready for the whole day in March Madness. I'm Jeff Parles. Good luck, everyone. This has been Sports by the Book at the South Point Studio.